Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. I'm Becky Sadek, Director of Marketing for Gebeya Inc. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Today's meeting is being recorded as an FYI. We're really excited that you joined us for Smart Staffing for Your Startup. It's going to be a very engaging and enlightening discussion and presentation from our CEO and co-founder, Amadou Dafe, talking from the perspective of having run a freelancing platform in Africa for the last few years, and the experiences and lessons learned from working with several startups and being a startup ourselves. We'll also hear from Yannick Lafang, our CFO, who is going to dig a little bit into more of the financial models and some of the benefits to be reaped from leveraging freelancers for your business. To those of you who submitted some very engaging and thought-provoking questions, we will also be addressing those throughout the presentation and then as well as at the end. So the flow is going to be as I just described, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end where you can also add additional questions that may come up. Feel free to put those in the chat, which I will be monitoring. And then we'll also just have some free-flowing conversation at the end. We really want this to be an engaging session. There was definitely some overlap from the questions that you all had. So your question is probably a question that someone else has as well. So without further ado, and with a quick intro for those of you who may not be as familiar with us, as I said, Gebeya is an online freelance marketplace. We are for the best of African talent and really about leveraging and identifying the power of freelance talent here on the continent and in the diaspora in order to power businesses, especially when it comes to startups and SMEs. We really see the engine as being freelancers. So with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Amadou. I'm going to turn off my video.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Becky. Thank you all for joining us on this Saturday. Looking forward to sort of give you as much knowledge that we sort of seen the past few years running a freelance marketplace. But also really the takeaway from me is to sort of convey a message that without figure out, if you're a business, if you run a business, whether it's a startup or SME, if you haven't figured out how to properly staff, this is really the kind of thinking you have to do. Because since with the pandemic, with COVID and everything, a few things have changed in a sense where location is not necessarily now the new norm. You can have any talent working from anywhere. That's one. Two, you have now the flexibility to source talent that have certain type of skills that were not available in your location. Maybe if you're in sort of East Africa, but you need talents where have certain type of skills, but live in West Africa, you'll be able to leverage them. But most importantly also is if you have some redundancy in your staff, meaning people who do the same thing, there may be an opportunity for you to look at, say, well, how do I outsource some of this stuff, right? And make use of your core staff in a better way. But one of the things that we first identify when we talk to our partners, and we like to call them partners rather than clients, who are startups and SMEs, is this fear of hiring contractors and freelancers instead of hiring permanently. Everybody's so quick to say, I want to hire someone permanently, and which means that it comes with a couple of things, right? And we'll look at those different issues there. And then sort of being afraid of saying, if I hire a contractor, they may leave me, they may sort of, take away my intellectual property. I may not be able to convey my culture properly, and so on and so forth. So those are the different things that we're going to look at, and then I'll pass on the mic to Yannick, so he can drill down. He's our CFO, so he can pretty much drill down on the different things and how you can look at this from a cost perspective. So with that, I think Becky, you're in charge of the presentation. Yeah. So one of the things that let me skinny down my Zoom is a bit funny. So what are the different things that we kind of sort of enumerated here with the problems that we see when startups are trying to hire. So the first one is usually around budget, especially if you are located in emerging economies or emerging countries. Now, if you're in Europe, maybe in the US, that's a different story, where budget may be a problem, but essentially there's different ways or different resources you can leverage in Europe or some other places to sort of figure out how to work with the budget. But if you are in Africa, for example, you're an African startup, budget is your number one problem, right? You may not have raised money, you may not have some working capital, but you need help. You need people to come help you build your company. So the first thing is the problem of budget and composition for your staff. The other thing is expertise, right? And I'll talk about this on whereby people have this impression that Africa has abundant talent, right? Which is true. Talent is everywhere in Africa, but it's very raw, right? It depends on what level you are in your business, whether you're an early stage or very early stage, even at the prototype stage, and then you get to the early stage, then you go to the scale stage and growth and so on and so forth. You have different kinds of needs and different kinds of experience and talent that you're going to need. So how do you navigate that in that sense? So expertise is one of the challenges that you'll face. And the other thing is loyalty of talent. How do you make your talent loyal, right? Some people, come up with different mechanism. One of them that we've done within Gebeya was to actually give shares to some of the key hires, right? And the other things that other people are doing is benefits, right? Around giving certain types of benefits to allow the talent to feel like they own part of the company, or they want to really sort of plug in and deliver what they set out to do. The other thing is remote versus on-site. Now, this is real. There's no more sort of any option. You may have, if you're a startup right now and you deal with tech products and stuff, essentially your team, whether it's now or in the next couple of years or so, you're definitely going to have some remote people that actually you can work with, right? Not everybody would want to be on site or even have the capability to be on site. Maybe even reduce your cost of operation where your office got a lot smaller than what it was initially. Some of the other things is hiring permanent versus long-term, part-time, right? Temporary. Some of the others, reliable source of hiring. So this comes in where most of the startups will find 2 or 3 ways to hire people, whether they go to a staffing agency, whether they go through referral or go to a group of sort of community of tech people, or usually one of the founders is maybe an engineer, right, and want to build a product. So he's a CTO. One of the co-founders is the chief operation officer, right? So it's really sort of figure out where do you usually go when you need to hire, and there's many sources that some of them work, some of them don't work, right? So they also think that if you're a startup, your whole goal should be to sort of fail fast, right? Go to market fast, and for that it's timely, costly to sort of go to a hiring process, right? Hiring process for someone permanently may take between from 3 to 6 months, just because you got to go through so many CVs, so many different kinds of things. Cost, if you have an HR department, you may be lucky as a startup, depends on what stage you are. That has to go through different kinds of CVs, take some time to go through them, interview them, and then the talent that you want may not even be sort of the person you want. Then you start back at zero, right? So also the question of payroll, right? How do you pay your staff? Let's say you have talent who are in a different country than yours, right? Then you have to figure out a way to sort of send them money and pay them, right? Then you look at internal versus contractors. So do you want people who are internal, who are sitting in sort of a permanent employee, or do you want people who come and go and as you need them? The other thing is intellectual property, right? Thinking about, if I hire these contractors, these freelancers, how can I trust them with my intellectual property? The diversity and inclusiveness. A lot of these companies now looking at sort of diversifying early, having women be more involved early in a company, especially if you're a tech company, right? Or having, different kinds of culture involved, right? To help you sort of, build a culture that's more, if you have a product that's aspired to be global, you have to think of diversity within your own talent pool. Culture and language, right? So maybe you need someone who does speak a different language or speak the same national language you use. Say, for example, you're from Francophone Africa, or you're from Quebec, or you're from France. Some of these countries speak French. You may want to have the talent to primarily speak French, but also who's very good at English or speaks English but know how to communicate in French as well, right? And then also the most important part of a startup, depending on, so again, what stage you are, especially at the early stage and stuff, is go to market fast, right? So these are the different things that we've seen. So this is not something we just came up with. This is actually the problems we see with the startups that we deal with right now as a freelance marketplace. Okay, if you know. Okay, so why is that problem, right? So if we can look at it differently, the first thing we have to look at is the region, right, on in which your startup is in. So if you're in the US, the type of challenges you have with talent is less of, are they there, or are they, is it the right sort of mix it within the culture I'm trying to build? It's different kinds of problems than if you're a startup in Africa, where your issue may be, I want someone in my country. Like for example, if you're from Nigeria, you have a startup in Nigeria, you would say, preferably I want to have talent in Nigeria. But in the US, you can have, because of the nature of freelancing, the nature of remote, that's been there before COVID, by the way. You'll be comfortable living in New York, but hiring a talent in San Francisco, right? So that sort of dependency on the region in which you are sort of makes it harder for some of the founders or CEOs or managers within these small businesses or startups to make a decision, right? Second thing is the skill set around tech talent, right? So because of huge demand in terms of talent, there's sort of a scramble for talent, right? So, but it depends. If you are building a prototype or POC or maybe MVP, you can go with maybe some interns, right? People who just graduated or people who've done a little bit of sort of software development. I'm gonna just stick to maybe tech for now, right? Or even maybe if you want to do social media and you want to have a digital marketing expert, you may want to hire people who are more entry level and junior in that sense, right? Because you want to just get a product and then maybe position it, or at least showcase this to investors who may be able to invest, and so on and so forth. So the product maybe you're trying to build maybe may have one or two sort of users around it, right? So you can prove that a couple of users can actually download an app, install the app, and go through the process. But the moment you go from a proof of concept and get to beta or beta level, beta level product, you may need a little bit more seniority in the way you're hiring, or more less of a seniority but more experience, right? So maybe you want to deploy now this prototype app into the cloud, AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud, right? In that, maybe you need someone who knows how to deploy that. So that cost, it comes in now in a different cost, because that type of talent is a little bit, will charge you more. So for someone who's an intern, maybe you pay him $2 an hour, $5, you got him for free to build a prototype. Now, if you want to move your product from a POC and move it to a cloud, maybe that AWS engineer or someone like that, it costs you $25 an hour. So now that maybe you deploy the product, but now you need to sort of optimize it. You realize after you deploy the product, some of the functionality is not proper. There's timeouts on the application and so on and so forth. Then you get to a point where now you need to hire an architect or someone who's a lead engineer who can actually refactor whatever product was built. What I mean refactoring, I don't mean necessarily code. It can even be from the product ownership, right? Because essentially when you build a product, there's different levels of people at from a vertical perspective that will touch the product. Anyway, from the product owner, then you have the lead engineer or CTO or architect, then you have the engineers themselves, then you have the quality assurance people, and you got the DevOps, and so on and so forth, right? So maybe at the stage where now the product is no longer optimized, or some of the user experience are not there, or something like that, you may want to bring in, say, a product owner or some UX UI experts who can sort of tweak the product, or even scrap the products and start again from the beginning. For that, you may need also some different kinds of skills to come in and help you out, right? And then you get to a higher level where now, okay, you want to distribute your product in different regions. So you started off very well, say in France, but now you want to go to Italy, now you want to go to Kenya. Well, now you need to scale that product out there, right? Is it scalable to multiple languages, multiple regions, and so on and so forth? For that, you definitely need maybe a solution architect, right? And you may also maybe beef up your product team to figure out what are the different features that someone in France or someone in Kenya will look at, right? And how do they look at it?
So isn't it here?
So if you just So those are the things that you got to look at the different levels of skill sets. So when we say that, for example, in our case, the talent is abundant, for example, in Africa, most of it is very raw, right? There's a small percentage that actually have those specialty skills in those different areas that I mentioned, product ownership, DevOps, and so on and so forth, right? The last thing that we also see as a problem is how fast do you hire, right? Startups have to hire fast because they have to fail fast, make decision fast, iterate, in order to sort of continue and fitting what the customer wants. And if it takes you too long to hire, say, an engineer or product owner, then you're behind, and competition is probably gaining up on you, or you may not even be able to invest. Maybe an investor will come in and say, I want a prototype in a month, right? And it takes you 3 months to hire a software engineer who's going to build you that is problematic as well. So between these three problems, right, the scarcity of talent at a different level of your startup, right? Not just saying that I know how to code, but what else, what other talents do I need? Also, what region you are in, right? And most importantly, also, how do you hire fast to get to do what you need to do? And eventually, so as a startup, if you're a venture right now, or you're even SME, you are a company, and you have different things in there. So you either call yourself a startup, or you're an entrepreneur, just starting off with your co-founder, and then you need to build your talent team, which I think Yannick will touch in a little bit, where you're going to have the non-management team, which you probably hire at first, and then you have the management team and the executives, right? And then once you get to that level, then you get to, okay, now I need capital, right? Pre-seed, maybe you don't need a strong executive team at pre-seed. Maybe you just need a strong management team. But when you get to seed, you may need to have a CTO in place, maybe a chief operation in place, CFO. We had to do that to be able to raise money ourselves. So it's very important. Now, when you get to Series A, B, and C, then it's a different kinds of hiring as well, right? Different kinds of skill set that you need at the executive level. Maybe hire a bunch of also non-management staff that can actually help build products better or faster. Becky? So what are the solutions? So like I say, most of the clients we deal with, if they're not familiar, if they're not from the Western world, meaning they're not in North America or Europe, in general, they're very sort of skeptical about freelancers, right? Although if they really understand what does it mean and what value does it bring you, you probably hire more freelancers than even permanent employees. So how do you look at it? You look at it in three ways. This is more of the way we've seen how we advise companies on hiring, and also how do we put my internet says is unstable. Can you guys still hear me, Becky? Or Yannick?
You're clear.
I'm clear. Perfect.
Yes.
Right. So what I usually tell a startup, at least up to the seed level, right? Because after the Series A, B, and C is a different story. But at the seed level, you need to have your core team. These are the people who are loyal to you, dedicated, who really want to help you build a company that will be worth millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars. Okay, but because of nature of scarcity of talent, right? You may need to say, how do I augment my team, right? Without sort of taking in the burden of hiring people, giving benefits, giving all these things, and then firing them would be a problem as well. So if you want to get rid of talent, sometimes once you have him permanently, he may be sort of an issue there. We've sort of experienced that within our own startup, where it's very hard, for example, to fire people in African countries, just because the laws, so the countries are so desperate for employment, the government makes it very difficult to say to fire someone, right? Because and if you fire someone, maybe they expect you to pay them 6 months' salary, right? To fire them. So if you live in those environments where it's very hard to fire someone, and that can cause sort of like a trauma within your own startup in your team, it's better to consider hiring, specialty contractors who come help you out, right? So you augment your core team with freelancers. So what it brings is new blood into the team, so it helps the legacy team be more competitive. I'm not sure if you have experiences, but let's say you have a lead engineer who's very good, who tells you always that they're the best, they're the best, and there's nobody there to challenge them. So imagine you're bringing a contractor who's also at the same level, comes in and plugs into the company. All of a sudden, you see a few things happening, right? You see the shortcomings of that lead engineer, and then also what needs to be beefed up within the team for the team to be better. So by bringing in new blood, which is sort of augmented contractor sort of role, it creates a new dynamic within your company. Most importantly, it doesn't threaten the team. Because the moment you always hire a permanent team, people are saying, okay, maybe I'm not doing my job or something like that. So it's a bit sort of like, all right, we're hiring more people, but I need to be a little bit more cautious in the sense. Maybe the person that you just hired will take my job, okay? But if the core team understand you're only bringing these contractors temporarily, they have less sort of fear in that sense. At least that's what we saw, okay? So hiring specific freelancers or contractors, it doesn't have to be only in software development. It can be in digital marketing, it can be in business operations, it can be in finance and so on and so forth. And Yannick will probably touch on that, right? The other thing that other companies we've seen have done, especially if it's around product, they would outsource some of the work they can't do in-house because the team is too limited. Say you're building a fintech app, your engineer or your core engineer team are very good at building APIs, right? To integrate to different multiple payment systems and so on and so forth. But then you need, none of them have experience in building mobile application or even having UX UI experience to even build a mobile application, right? So now you can say, okay, instead of, I don't have the budget and I don't want to bring in permanent employee coming into the company, you know, let them learn the culture of the company, because usually it takes about a month or 2 months on board for them really to be sort of up to speed. Let me outsource this particular part of the project, which is the app, to a company, right? So when the company would work with the core team from an integration perspective. So the project would be outsourced to the company. They'll work with the core engineering team from the API integration perspective. That's a very smart way also, if you don't have budget, you have a short period of time to launch a product and so on and so forth, to do that. And eventually, once you get to a point, you can go back to hiring, augmenting your team through freelancers to contractors. Okay? So the benefits, make your core team more competitive. We've done that with a corporate company in West Africa, where as soon as we brought in our guys, everybody who was within that company sort of leveled up, because it was necessary for them to do that, because they see these contractors who make maybe sometimes less money than them, were able to deliver more. So they learn very quickly. So the concept of new blood versus legacy again, right? Legacy doesn't mean these guys are old, it doesn't work. It means just they need new challenges, because new blood always brings in new challenges and new opportunity. And the team spirit gets more excited. So if you have a core team that's been sort of abused, right? They have hard deadline. Some of them are stressed and so on and so forth. And you plug in new blood into that team, what it does, it creates a new excitement. Now these guys are a little bit more relief. Like, at least we got the mobile application developer we needed, or we need to add this extra help on quality assurance. The app would be better and so on and so forth. So that excitement is very important to have. And the only sort of you can do it in and out. You can't keep that excitement forever, but at least in and out by bringing in team to do specific things, right? So when you bring those contractors, if they like your company and you like them, we've seen that some of the companies that we work with say, we want to hire this guy permanently, right? We want to give him shares and so on and so forth. So these are the benefits of keeping your core team, knowing when to bring in additional talent to help you build whatever, or outsource them, but also allowing the sort of the decision of maybe eventually identifying talent within the contractors that you can hire full time. Okay. Okay. So how does that work? Right? So how do you bring that blood or the projects and everything within your company without compromising much of the stuff? And I believe that we're going to share the recording of this, Becky, or the presentation later, but I'll touch a few points here, right? So the first thing I always do when I talk to potential clients who want to hire freelancers from us, right? Some of it is automated, but some of them we get involved because, you know, it's a bit tricky, is do they have a clear vision of what their product is, right? What stage are they? If you're at the proof of concept things, but you want an app, let's say you want to build the Airbnb of, you know, the new Airbnb. And if you understand how much money, time, and energy Airbnb has spent to get to where they are, and you think that you can get a developer for $5 an hour or something like that to stick with you to that point, that's just sort of dreaming, right? So if you want a proof of concept, you may want to have a very small thing built, right? But you need to have a very clear vision to do that. And a talent can help you do that from a contracting perspective. This is where you get a business analyst or product owner to help you sort of flush out this proof of concept. Then you get to the MVP, which is a different level. You get to an MVP, what do you want to be live and ready for clients to start using immediately when you go beta, right? And then you go to sort of full-blown product, which means that you update features, right? By keeping the vision where you want to go, it helps you sort of knowing where do you start, How do you go better, and how do you keep on adding features, right? The other thing is also that you actually need to do, if you have a startup or an SME, and do an inventory skills of your current talent, because things move very fast. Maybe you've been with the same talent, your core talent, I mean, yeah, 2-3 years or so. But have you done an inventory skill? Like, have they upgraded themselves? Have they learned new skills, right? Because if you have that, then you'll know how are you going to actually scale up your team to get to the product that you want to build. That's a multi-million-dollar product, right? Are they using certain types of tools, right? If they're not, if you hire at the POC level, MVP level, usually you're at the mercy of the developer or the talent who actually hold your code. They can hold it on their laptop. They may not be sort of sharing it in a code repository where other developers can come in, so that when you have a new developer come in or new talent, what have you, they don't have access to the code, or they don't know what this guy has done. Everything is remain on their laptop unless the guy shares the code later or something like that, right? So knowing that, is this person actually capable of sharing code or sharing environment? Because in today's age, products are built by shared knowledge. There's no one person. Anytime I hear someone say, I need a full stack to build me the product X, I'm like, great. That's only to get you to some point, because there's two dangers to that. If your full stack developer leaves you, you're done. You're gonna have to start from scratch. But if your full stack is not so good at UX UI, then you put a jeopardy on how your customers actually respond to your product, right? So having that balance of knowing, that what tools or at least do an inventory skill set of what your talent is, by allowing, for example, to take tests, or having external audit come in, due diligence of some company who come do the evaluation. That would be important to do, right? Which once you do sort of the inventory skill, you see the shortcomings of your own team, right? What are they missing? Okay, why every time you call your developer, say, "Oh, it'll be done next week"? For me, it's unacceptable. Give me a date. Why next week? What's going on, right? All those different things will tell you, is it because it's burning out, or because the technology that you guys are building is so difficult, or maybe the integration with payment processor doesn't work, and so on and so forth, right? And also know what will accelerate the development of your product. So if you know that, for example, let's say you build in a marketplace where there's two-side market, right? You have your supply and your demand, and you want to sort of solve that chicken and egg problem where you want to sort of accelerate both at the same time. That's too much pressure sometimes, especially if you want to accelerate on your own team. So you have to figure out, well, where do I go first? Maybe I need to accelerate this product first, get it to market, let's say the suppliers, onboard the suppliers, and then when I'm done with that, shift over to the demand, right? But if you're at the level where you've already raised money at Series A and stuff like that, problem should exist, because you should be able to fulfill talent at the two level, right? For the two different sides of your marketplace, the supply and demand. You can have a demand team that worries about the product demand, and then the supply team which worry about that. But knowing what to accelerate is actually important when you want to hire talent, right? So know also what will make your go-to-market faster, because that's the key. Any startup, whether sort of at an early stage or even at a later stage, is going to market with either a product or features. Right. So if you're at a later stage, you already have a product, everybody's using it, but you realize there's a feature that everybody's asking for. So how fast can you go to market with that? Right. It'll allow you sort of to backtrack and say, okay, I need this specific talent to hire to get me there. Right. And so, and when you do it from the POC beta level, same thing. Right. What do I need to do so fast? And what kind of talent do I need to get there to really put my product up there? Right. So which also allow you to identify the bottleneck. Understand what external help do you need, right? Do you need permanent hire if you don't have a budget for it? Because the most natural thing is I need to hire someone. Startups, we always go to that route, but how do you hire that person? Is it a permanent staff? Why do you need a permanent staff? Do you think a permanent staff would be excited to solve that one problem that you have and stick with you for the rest of the life of the company? If you see, the way I'm doing this is all around a product building thing, rather than building a culture where you have thousands of employees, hundreds of employees, all that stuff. For me, is more of, if you look at freelancers, is really around your product, right? The luxury or the luxury of really having a big team and all of that is more of the culture of the company. But so freelancing may not work in there. Hence why we think like that as entrepreneur. We don't have a tendency of thinking, I want to hire a contract, I want to hire someone permanent, build a culture with this person, grow with that person, so on and so forth, right? But with this new generation, they'll maybe give you 2 years of their life. Most of the young people now who actually join companies, they want to move faster. They want to experience different things. So they may work for you for 2 years and then shift to another one, right? But by understanding sort of, is this person I'm going to hire going to help me build this product faster? Then I need a freelancer. But is the product sort of, I need someone really to manage it over time and stuff like that, then you may need to add someone permanently within your core team, right? Protect your IP. So this one I'm very sort of excited about, because I've sort of worked for a couple of companies in the past in the US, corporate company, big corporate companies, and this was always the issue, intellectual property. So the trust of, how do you trust freelancers that can come in and out, or consultants, without jeopardizing your core business or being copied. So one of the things that we came up with at the time was to say, there's some code that would never be shown, or some even knowledge sharing that would never be shown to any freelancers. So you create what we call a sandbox, or some sort of environment where the freelancers will only work for specific tasks. So you see, you don't necessarily hire a contractor freelancers to be permanently in your company. Then they'll have access to your intellectual property. But if you hire them temporarily for a specific task, for a specific feature, specific product, they can deal with that. And when they're done, they can sort of go back to the market and get things, right? Identify a long-term talent marketplace partner. As you build your company, and we've been through this, is at some point you need to plan out what kind of talent you're going to need to the sort of different stages of your company. Whether you're at the prototype level, where it's one person entrepreneur, hire a talent to build stuff, get to the beta where you have now a little bit bigger team, get to the Series A level where you need like a serious team to help you scale. You go to B, where it's more acquisition and all kinds of stuff that you want to do. You have to map it out early, right? So that allows you to say, okay, when I get to this stage, this is the person I'm going to. Now, you may not be able to do that because you may not know the knowledge on how to do that. So this is where you're bringing a partner, right? Whether it's Gebeya or anybody else, right? Can actually help you think about that, because we've been through the same thing. When we were raising our seed, the first thing investors is, what's your pipeline of hiring? And does it make sense with what you say? If you say you want to be, say, $1 billion company, but your pipeline is not clear, is very pure, they're like, this person they don't know what they're doing. Okay. Go ahead, Becky. Okay, so the talent landscape, what does it look like? There's a prediction that the talent landscape going to be dominated essentially by freelancers by 2030. The reason why is, and COVID accelerated this. The reason why is, if you're bound geographically for talent, you might not be able to have the best team possible. If you have the trust that you can hire someone remotely permanently, why wouldn't you trust the freelancers to work also remotely, right? Is it because of maybe the short period of time a freelancer would be involved? Or is it because the freelancer is multitasking? All those different things, right? But the fact that now that it's been shown that people are more comfortable now working as freelancers as talent than working for a company, unless they really love that company and want to sort of be part of that culture, right? Or you incentivize that person so much that they don't want to go anywhere else, they want to work for you. If that's not the case, and this person is only excited about a product they're building, the freelancing way would be the way that everybody will fall into, right? If you look at the United States of America, I believe 40 or 50 million people, right, or 57 million people in the US are freelancers. So look at the entire United States of America, 300 million and some people, 57 million people are freelancers, right? So what does that tell you? That's the entire labor workforce. And the country still function. There's still multi-billion-dollar companies in the US, multi-trillion-dollar companies in the US, right? So if you are in an emerging country or emerging continent, or you are in a more sort of settled, like let's say Europe, all right, you may also need to sort of change that shift, because some of our clients in Europe also want to hire permanent employees, right? Because of culture things or what they want to do. But now you may not have that luxury, at least if you want to compete. Because knowing that one of the way that people now find jobs is building their own startup or being consultant with the freedom to sit at home, maybe be with your family or having time to have vacation and so on and so forth, will be more enticing for people to be freelancers. So you have no choice, pretty much, not to hire freelancers. So the earlier you understand what freelancers mean, how to hire them, price them, and so on and so forth, the better it allows you sort of to navigate this landscape. So this slide has a lot of information, but what freelancers marketplace like Gebeya can do for you, pretty much. We can process and identify the right talent without too much cost to you. So if you were to, as a CEO, for example, you want to hire people, You put a post on LinkedIn or something like that, you get hundreds of applicants. You scan through them. Takes your time, money, the time you spend on it, but at the same time, it doesn't allow you to hire faster. Okay? Or you may pay a staffing agency, say, a 1 month salary for that talent to be identified and then to be hired permanently. Or for the freelance marketplace, you can go in, within minutes, you should be matched. You pay what you want to pay for a short period of time for a product to be built, features, and so on and so forth, right? So time-wise and operational-wise, companies like Gebeya or Upwork, Fiverr, or some of these guys will be able to help you sort of do that in a more efficient way, right? So also establish a partnership. So most of you, if you're a company right now, the idea here is to sort of have a partnership to really understand how do we help you, build better companies. And the way you build better companies, part of it is talent first. So you have the great entrepreneurs, the great co-founders, the team of management, but the people who actually do the work, your developers, your product owner, your digital marketing expert, your salespeople, all those different things need to sort of be identified early, or sort of picked, or at least understand certain nuances on, how to hire talent. I myself, when I first started, I made so many mistakes hiring talent, so many mistakes. I was going sometimes with my gut, without, no processes, none of those different things, right? And I paid for it. So those are expensive learning experiences, because as a startup, you need to fail fast. But if you wait a year and a half to realize this talent that you hire was just because they were your friends or whatever, it's a year, it costs you a year and a half, right? But if I had a partner company that I can look up to, that would maybe able to identify or help me identify the talent I need to hire, that might not necessarily fit my emotional things, but more of a practical way, or maybe different kinds of sort of way of choosing that talent. So having a partner early would be important to have, right? But alleviate the fear of what if my top engineer leaves me. We have quite a few clients, partners that went through that panic. Just came to us. They knew we were a talent company for a minute, but they never reacted. As soon as the top engineer saying, "I'm leaving, I'm going to work for Google, I'm going to work for this other company, or I need better pay, or something happened in my family," they panic. So now, what are you going to do? Your top engineer is gone. You have a bunch of guys that may not be able to, or you may not even have anyone below him. What do you do? But by having a partner, immediately, oh, let me go talk to Gebeya, or let me go talk to this partner who can help me sort of at least alleviate, or trying to see how we can work together, something, right? So there's this model now that sort of, just came up the past 2-3 months, at least in my head, is talent as a service, right? Just like software as a service, right? Or infrastructure as a service. So if you're a startup and you're planning to have millions and millions of users, transactions and stuff, the cloud is your best friend, right? You may need to have an AWS account, Google account, so on and so forth, because that cost, it's elastic, right? When you have high traffic, your costs go high. When you have low traffic, your costs go down, and you can monitor that. So you're not burdened by spending, say, $10,000 a month across 12 months. You may pay $10,000 a month, maybe for 3 months, and the rest of the months, maybe you pay $2,000. So if the way we store, or the way we sort of deploy solutions now is through infrastructure as a service, or even software as a service, which is something like, say, your accounting system. For example, we use QuickBooks online, right? It saves us so much money in terms of buying licenses, on Excel, or buying licenses of this, and there was no sort of, people have different version of a certain Excel file for accounting. But merging all of that stuff into QuickBooks, where the CFO can go in very quickly and see stuff and make decisions and stuff like that, is very powerful. So that's software as a service, right? Your digital marketing, or your CRM, customer relationship management tools, CRM, right? HubSpot is a software as a service, and so on and so forth. Your payment processor is a software as a service. So all these different things allow you to sort of outsource the burden of what's not your business, right? If your business is not into accounting, why would you sort of manage a bunch of stuff in your operation, right? So infrastructure as a service, the cloud, or software as a service, but having service you pay on when you need it, right? So this is where infrastructure, talent as a service becomes it, where you come into a platform, you know exactly what you want. But remember, we said that prior to that, you need to do your homework, do your due diligence on your talent, do all that stuff, get that information to know exactly where your bottleneck is by leveraging a partner, go to a platform, hire the right person to do the job fairly quickly over a period of time, maybe a month, 2-3 months, depending on what subscription that you have, right? So this is really how we're thinking about solving this problem. We're trying to position the company to do that. Primarily, we are very biased about Africa, at least because we know that the problem of talent in Africa is a little bit more worrisome because of the abundance of raw talent and very few sort of high-skilled, or not even high-skilled, more like experienced talent. Like hiring a CTO in Africa is extremely hard for two reasons. The best ones are already hired. So for you to poach them, you better come up with some good money. If you don't have the good money, then it doesn't work out. Second, the experience. The CTO may maybe work in healthcare and build a healthcare product, but may not have knowledge into fintech products, right? And the CTOs don't go around in Africa so you can find them, right? We've seen the similar problem in Europe as well, right? In a sense where it's not easy to get, unless you really raise proper money, so you can go poach guys or girls into other company. It's very, very hard to get in. But those CTO executive level are very expensive, and they very sort of, it takes longer to hire them, right? It may take you 6 months, 3 months, a year to hire a CTO because you got to go through the different kinds of nuances, what that CTO want, right? You know, what kind of benefits do they need to relocate and so on and so forth. So Europe, we send that. It's only in America, because then I'm talking about America because of my experience there, where you may have a senior guy who have enough experience because he worked in multiple companies and turn him into a CTO. Let me give you an example. Maybe not in the US, but our VP of engineer, right? He worked with me on so many products, so he can navigate different things. He's used to dealing with developers and so on and so forth. When I was looking for CTO, the idea was like, do I go get an expensive CTO from the, you know, somewhere and bring him in? They don't even understand what we're building. Or do I get someone who've done enough to prove that he can build any technology in multiple industries, but also is less costly, or at least from the budget that I have right now? Right. So those decisions are really sort of what we're looking at. I think that's my last slide, Becky, right?
Yes, thank you so much.
No worries, thank you.
So Yannick can take the floor now.
I think Yannick is muted.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
Okay, very good. Okay, so again, thank you very much for having us today for this exciting webinar around smart hiring. Amadou talked a lot about the problem and why it's relevant to hire a freelancer from a product perspective, tech perspective. I think he gave a lot of good reasons why it's an avenue to consider. From a obviously from a macro trend perspective, as you guys know, with COVID, remote, online, it's only going to grow, and so I think it's worth putting that as what of your strategy to basically get the right talent. What I'm going to do, and again, is really look at it from a finance perspective and more of a business model perspective. And so our role, at least my team role at Gebeya, really is to basically allocate resource, in addition to obviously doing some reporting, looking at, models and all that stuff. But part of it is allocating resource, and part of it is allocate resources with very limited amount of cash. And if you think about, startups in Africa, you have, probably two top issues that you're dealing with, whether you're a CEO, founder, an entrepreneur. I guess the first one is money, right? It's very difficult to raise money, on the continent, as we know. And so you're dealing with the lack of cash and resources. So when you do have that limited resources, you want to maximize that. And so what does that mean? It means that you want to extend your runway, as much as possible, because you want to basically get to your next round, right? If you're raising seed, you want to make sure that you have enough money to get to the next round, and so on and so forth. You also want to make sure you have enough money to do your product market fit, right? To start having customers, because then you can generate revenue, and that could that would also compensate for that. You want to make sure also that while doing that, you have the right team in place, and so on and so forth. So what we are looking at doing also with our partner as an online marketplace is also help you or help the the companies we're working with look at it from a finance perspective, and why does it it makes sense. And so in that context, for example, if you take, we've estimated that, again, this is based on our own experience, within Gebeya, we estimated that, you can save between 20 to 30% in terms of saving when you go with a freelancer. And as you guys probably know, hiring is very expensive. And when I say hiring, I say full-time hiring. The search takes longer. As Amadou mentioned earlier, maybe you need to buy services from a hiring agency, right? Then it's going to take a while to basically get to the profile, because you need to get, that's the cost to your business. You may not think about it this way, but it is actually a cost, because, and when I say cost, it's an opportunity cost as well. If it takes you 3 months or 2 months to hire, or to put together a dev team to build your MVP, that is basically 3 months that you lost, and 3 months where you could have been launching and basically testing your market. So there's real opportunity cost when it comes to hiring between full-time and freelance. Then even when you hire, there is that training aspect. For a full-time hire, you need to bring them. They need to understand what you're doing. They need to understand the culture. You need to basically train them, and because they have to blend, necessarily with your team. Maybe they are on your at your location, et cetera, et cetera. So that's also adding into your cost, because there is a learning curve there, right? And so full-time hire will take you between a month to 2 months to basically get up to speed and really start to add value to your team. So it's really, again, the lag between when you actually capture the value of your investment, which is longer when you go with a full-time. And so then obviously you have the cost, which is really, if you think about hiring full-time in most African countries, you have a lot of associated costs to it. Amadou mentioned earlier that we live on a continent where our economies are not very good at creating jobs. And so for governments, when you create a job, they really want to make sure that that employee basically stays, and the way they do that is basically having all these additional benefits. So if you're looking at a typical hire, you have things like social insurance benefit. You could have even insurance benefit. You can have employer tax. You can have employee tax. You can have pension benefit, and that's in addition to the fact that you have to give them vacation, right? They're entitled to have leaves for if they're sick or et cetera, et cetera. So all that, which is really what you're getting yourself into when you're hiring a full-time, is a full package that has a cost. And so when you compare that to like a freelancer, you don't have that. And again, the contrast is very clear. And we're gonna go to some of the numbers, but that's also your cost from a cost perspective in terms of hiring a full-time. Then from an HR management, right? So hiring a full-time also means you have an HR person basically within your company, right? Because that is basically the model. You need that person to basically look at all kinds of performance review. That person to be looking at staff environment, payroll, all that stuff. So that also comes with a cost. And then you have the replacement, right? Like, so any team, whether you're a startups or whether you're a company, comes with a churn. And so when you have a full-time person, and Amadou again mentioned that rightly earlier, with our younger demographic, they tend to basically not be as loyal as the older generation used to be, because they're very thirsty for experience. They want to grow. They want to change environment. So what it means is that even though you hire somebody full-time and you want that person to commit to long-term with you, the reality is it's not going to happen. And even it's going to, that trend is going to continue to even accelerate. It is a trend already happening, in the Western countries like the US, or even in Europe, and it's also a trend that is going to eventually happen with our younger demographic, even in Africa. So from that perspective, if you think about the time you take to search the full-time employee, the time you took to train him, the cost associated with the taxes and the benefit, the cost of the HR, and then you have to basically replace that person after 2 years, and it adds up, really. And so I think when we look at the fear of having freelancer, maybe sometimes as entrepreneurs and CEO, we don't really look at the cost of hiring full-time as well, given what is happening and given the trends that are happening within the talent market. And so if you take an example, in Nairobi, for example, and so you're looking at, or in Kenya, you're looking at hiring a team of 3 developers, intermediate level, and you have a budget of about 1,500 per month. In a span of a year, if you compare hiring a full-time team of 3 and then hiring basically putting together a team of freelancer with a partner like Gebeya, you're looking at a saving potentially of about 1 million Kenyan shilling. I mean, that's a lot of money. And it's you can save so much that you can probably, with that money, have 4 people basically with the same budget, working for you. And I think from the business, I mean, when you look at, again, the context where we don't have a lot of resources as companies in Africa, so we have to maximize our cash. That is probably for a company or a startup size company, this is probably 2 to 3 months, potentially of extra runway, to your business, if you think about it as well. So all these really matters, right? And so when we basically go and work with partners, these are some of the things that we bring also to the table, is that, yes, there is that fear of, hiring freelancer, but at the same time, the benefit of having freelancer, I think, outweighs the fear that we should have. And I think, as Amadou alluded, whether we go freelance or whether we don't go freelance, there is a need, and we'll talk about it, as we continue to have this webinar, but there is a trend of, so like, what is the future of work and how do we organize work? Amadou talked a lot about product, right? He talked a lot about, making sure that you have the resources to do something. And I think in the future, as startups and everything, we really need to focus on what is really the outcome we're trying to achieve, as opposed to what is it that we want to put in place, right? I want to put in place a team, but really what I'm trying to do is I want to reach product market fit. That is really the outcome I'm trying to get at. And so if I'm trying to get to a product market fit, then what are the pieces that I need to put together to get me there? And really my focus should be, how do I get there the most effective and efficient way, right? Because I don't have a lot of resource. And so it's thinking about the way we look at how we build product, how we build business, right? And have a framework that allow us to be flexible, right? We talked a lot about in the startup space about being nimble, right? And so again, Amadou gave a great example about AWS, which again, today we go to the cloud. A couple of years ago, it was probably nobody would want to basically be on the cloud, because people would say, I'm not sure about the security of the cloud, right? Because I was used to have, my operating system on my computer. I'd rather have VPN, I'd rather have all that, on site, and that made me feel secure. Fast forward a couple of years, now, AWS is dominant, right? And I think the same thing also could be applicable for talent. Once we really change the way we look at work, right, and the way, whether you are a prototype company, whether you and Amadou talked about it, also as well, at different stage of your startup, right? I think your mixed of between like full-time and freelancer will change, right? And so as you build your product and you become a Series A or seed, I mean, IP, intellectual property, maybe building in-house becomes more important because now there's a lot more at stake. When you do prototyping and you're really trying to prove to an investor that, you have you have something that works, the key here is about your business model as opposed to your IP and your technology, right? Like the first thing you have to do is to prove that you have a business model. And sometimes you may even, go and look for open source to basically prove that you have a business model that can work. And then as you basically prove that, then you need to start building your technology and now worry about your IP, right? So really what we want to do with, what we're doing with partners is really looking at this from a, very holistic way, depending on where you are with your company and looking at, okay, how much money you can save. And again, when you look at a country like Senegal, for example, I don't know if we have any French people here, same example, if you have those 3 developers, and then you go with a freelance approach, you're looking at, 2 to 5 million franc CFA, in terms of saving. So again, thinking about it from, startups don't have a lot of resources. You want to maximize the resource that you have. Going the freelance approach is definitely possible, and it will make you save, again, between 20 and 30% in terms of saving. So moving on to the next slide. Again, we're not saying this just, to say it. This is also something that we are doing, within Gebeya. And again, like I said earlier, part of what my team does is looking at resource allocation, capital allocation, and making sure that we also optimize the limited resources that we have. And so if you can see across, the different areas of Gebeya, these are the percentage of basically people that are would consider be as freelancer, right? So sales, we have 90% basically freelancer because we have a lot of salespeople that are basically on commission. It's a very effective way, to basically generate business, right? And, these people, it works very well for them because they want to be flexible. These are guys who basically may be working on different products, they leverage the network. And so it works very well for them, okay? If you look at the tech, same, Amadou, I think, talked about it, earlier. We are an online marketplace, so it's very obvious that, you would see that we have a lot of, we do a lot of that as well within our tech. Even from an operation perspective, do we need to have, what are some of the resources that we can tap into so that we are, again, nimble, flexible, and we can basically function. Even finance, right? Like not everybody within finance, within the team is a full-time, because again, you don't need, if you need people to basically do your, your posting, your accounting, and things like that. I mean, in this day and age, as Amadou mentioned, we have QuickBook Online, which means you can basically have somebody anywhere in the world doing your posting and your entry, and you can be, Amadou can be, pretty much anywhere in the world now and basically see what's going on, right? So and again, this allocation has changed, right? From, 2 years ago to a year ago, or to even, in the future. But one thing is for sure, I do not foresee, Gebeya, at least for the next 3 years, having an allocation where you're going to see 100%, full-time. Because again, from a capital allocation perspective and from resource allocation perspective, it does not just make sense, because you want to tap into resources and talent where they are, right? You want to tap into resources and talent that are affordable. You want diversity within your resource and talent, and you want to be a nimble company. I think, going forward, companies that would sort of become, as Amadou said, $1 billion company, or, these are companies that will be able to go and tap into resources, and have processes in place, business model in place that are built to allow them to tap into freelance talent, but as well as core talent. And so I think this is definitely something that we are doing within the company, and this is definitely something that we also encourage from working with our partners. So I think we had a few questions. I'm just going to have to be mindful of the time. I know we had a few questions from the audience. I don't know, Becky, if we want to go to the Q&A, and then we can answer the questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yannick and Amadou both, and also for everyone's feedback in the chat here. So you all did submit some questions in advance, so we can go through some of those, and then we would also be happy to address any additional questions that have come up. So we actually have them compiled here on the slide, some of the ones that came in advance. So what I'll do is read through them, and we can kind of Amadou and Yannick, you can take, you can take them as you will. So first one is, what are important qualities I should look for when hiring, especially in developers and UX UI designers? So I think some of that was, I'll make a comment on the first one here. So I think some of that was addressed thus far. And maybe one thing that we can elaborate a bit more on is around attitude and motivation, and really looking at, as Amadou mentioned, you have a lot of, the younger generation eager for experience and change of scenery, and really some challenges. And so I think that hunger and that, desire is especially something that I've seen very prevalent in freelancers, because when you think about it, they are their own entrepreneur, they're their own individual business. And so it's in their best interest to maintain you as a client. It's in their best interest to keep you happy. And so, there's less of that risk of kind of falling into a pattern of, routine, or maybe a little bit of complacency, or a little bit too comfortable if you're doing the same thing day to day. Whereas if you are working with, with freelancers, there really is often that extra drive. Not in all, but certainly this is something, at least when it comes to finding the right people for our talent pool, this is something that is really key for us. And Amadou and Yannick, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I mean, this one is right. The qualities is more of, yeah. So if you're doing it, let's say to hire someone permanently, it's a little bit more challenging, right? I guess the way you look at it is doing the interview process, right? So what people are looking at now is no longer just the skill set in terms of the say let's take a UX UI. It's not just the knowledge skill set that you're looking for. You may look for something called, for example, emotional intelligence, right? Where how does this person sort of interact with a group of people, when you work in a team? That's very important, because if the UX UI is isolated, have one way of thinking, abrasive, they won't get along, for example, with your front-end developer, or will not get along with your product owner, right? So because products now are built in teams, unless, like I say, you want to build a prototype, you have a full stack developer, you hire, and there you go, right? But if you actually look at how products are built to scale or for beta and stuff, is within team. So one of the things that you have to look at is emotional intelligence. How does this person function in a group? Would it be toxic? Would it be this? That's what you look for. Because the skill set, you will do it through sort of, if it's a freelance, for example, like Gebeya, we already do the vetting for you. When we give you a UX UI person, we already vetted them, meaning we made sure that they say, or we validate what they know in terms of skill set. We even give them emotional intelligence tests to kind of gauge your personality. So when you come to us, you don't need to worry about the skill set. It's not to my best interest as a CEO of a freelancer to give you guys that didn't really match what you did. But the difference really is what other soft skill, people call it soft skill, but I call it emotional intelligence because it's a product building, right? But then the other thing is, if you want to hire permanently now, and you're going through your traditional route where you put out a post on LinkedIn, whatever, and you get a bunch of people send CVs, it's a lot harder because you have to gauge a lot of people, and you can't really become subjective even on who you're going to pick because you like them, so on and so forth. So, but if you, and especially if you're only alone, and you're the only one person who's actually doing the hiring, that can also be problematic because you go into your own sort of judgment, which I told you guys I made so many mistakes when I first started hiring because I was using my own judgment instead. But if you have a team already of 2-3 guys within your sort of executive team or management, even low management, that can participate into the hiring process, right? For developers or UX UI, they'll be able to pick up a few things that may not work within how you guys work. So those are the few things that I can mention there.
Okay, thank you. So I was actually just looking at the chat also, so we can kind of go back and forth, but actually the first question in the chat is the same as question 2 here about finding a co-founder. Specifically in the chat, Charles has asked that he's looking for a tech co-founder for his startup and is not technical, so writing the JD is challenging. So if there's any advice about how to overcome that or navigate that process. Maybe Amadou, you can speak to this since you were just talking about some of the hiring or in partnership lessons learned when starting out.
Right. So co-founders come in 2 flavors here. They come in where is your buddy, right? It's a friend. You guys have an idea, you have a passion, you come together, and then that's it, right? Maybe the co-founder has technical skills, it's good, or maybe both of you don't have technical skills, but you need to bring somebody else. So it's like a marriage, right? Or long-term dating in a sense, where you guys know each other, everything is good. I think what's difficult now is if you're a lone entrepreneur, you're the first founder, and then you're now bringing someone else that you want to be a co-founder, right? So in that regard is more of, do you share the same values? It's more of that, right? Because I consider, for example, both Yannick and Becky as co-founders, right? Because if we share the values of what we're building, so our vision is to be, do our part to make Africa more competitive using freelance marketplace, right? So if I help, for example, your business do better by providing freelance marketplace, you will make Africa become sort of at least appear to be more competitive. If I have talent that's so good that I can help, that serves, let's say, for example, a company in North America or Europe, it still makes us competitive. So that's our vision. So all I had to do is find people, whether they're co-founders as title or they're co-founders regardless, because I consider Becky and Yannick as co-founders, is to sort of figure out, do you guys align with that? First, do you agree that Africa needs to be competitive? Okay. Second, do you think that having talent and grooming the talent and providing the businesses make also sense? Okay. And then last but not least, are you ready to go in with me to build an exceptional company, right? But one of the 2 things you always need to find out from your co-founder is 2 things. What is the passion? What are they why, right? And what are they willing to sacrifice for? For example, I take Yannick when I needed to convince him. So Yannick ran his own company, by the way, when we were friends before, of course, but he ran his own company. So I had to convince Yannick to come join me as a CFO co-founder to help me build my finance and model and everything and become eventually the CFO. The first thing I asked him is, what is your passion? We are aligned. We're aligned that Africa needs to sort of be more competitive. Then I asked him, what are you willing to sacrifice? That was the hard part. He made that decision emotionally afterwards. There was a couple of circumstances that happened, he would welcome to share, but made him connect to that emotional stuff. It's like, I'm willing to sacrifice leaving, my company. He left his company, leaving a few things to come join me in his journey, right? Becky, same thing. There's a few sacrifices she needed to make, right? She was supposed to go back to the US, I believe, or something like that, because she spent some time in Ethiopia. But there was a few things she needed to sacrifice, right? Including salary cuts, including not having a salary for 9 months, or something like that, right? To join and see this thing. So essentially is that having that passion to resonate with someone that's willing to sacrifice something to join you into this journey. It's not easy, believe me, but it's really about the first founder. The first founder is who sets pretty much that path, right, with the passion. So I was lucky that way that I was able to set the path, and these guys who came and joined me to help me build what we have today. I hope that answered that question, at least partially.
Thanks. Yannick, would you like to add anything onto that?
No, not really, because we have a lot of questions. I rather, yeah, I want to try so we can get, because there are more coming, right?
Yes, yes.
Very-
So I'm going to go ahead and jump actually over to the chat as well. I want to make sure to address the questions of those who've joined us today, but also come back to the ones listed here. So the next one is, how do I get freelancers to sell my construction and interior decor products effectively in Ghana? My in-house staff is not doing a good job of it yet. I'm in a tight spot. This is from Africa's Next.
So I guess I can, and Amadou can complement here, but I mean, this one is it's an interesting one. So I guess what I'm hearing here is that you know, you're looking for, you know, to put together a sales team, basically, if this is what I'm hearing. So how do you get freelancers to basically sell my construction? So right now at the moment, obviously, I'm not aware of like you know, an online marketplace, you know, with sales, you know, sales resources and sales talent. What I can tell you is that you know, Gebeya right now, we, you know, heavily focused on like everything digital, so tech, developer, and then also like digital marketing and you know, things like that. But I would say that having a partner like Gebeya can also be an additional resources that you can use. Like I said, we use for our own sales team sort of freelancer. I mean, we hired them, or we found them through sort of our network and etc. But having, what I can tell you, which is another case for freelancing here, is that when you have a sales team that is in-house, and you also have to think about incentive. So when you have somebody in-house, you know, you pay that person. And so the incentive basically to go out and sell your stuff is there, but it's not to the point where they're going to produce necessarily, because whether they produce or not, you know, you're paying them, right? So this is where having a different approach can make a big difference for you. And say, okay, I'm going to bring a bunch of commission-based salespeople and put them together with my in-house team. Now they're going to feel, my in-house team is going to start to feel the pressure now, because the freelance sales guys only get paid when they close a deal. Like, you only eat what you kill. So by mixing them together, you're going to see that your in-house team will have to step up, basically. And again, this is one way also where you can basically use a mixed to even also improve and dynamic and make your in-house team a bit more dynamic. And again, you can do that for a couple of months, you know, and then after, you know, when you see that your in-house team is picking up, you know, again, these are freelancers, you can basically, you know, end the relationship. So that's what I can tell you where I sit at the moment.
All right.
I think you nailed it. Yeah.
Nice. So there's a couple of questions, or I think there's some, I can combine them, around finding the best staff. And maybe this question, how can we be competitive and attract employers? This was employees. Was maybe what the question was meant to be?
Yeah, there's another one, I think from Mutembi also on the chat, which I think is an interesting one too. Because basically what he's saying is that, you know, how do you retain great talent? So he says the point about taking less time to train freelancer than training full time, he doesn't agree with that. He's of a different opinion. So he says incorporating a freelancer to your org chart is time consuming, especially if you have to do it every time you hire freelancing, kindly discuss. And so I think this is probably the feeling or the opinion of a lot of entrepreneurs in Africa when they look at freelancing. So what I want to tell him is that, like the same way you look at it today is the same way we used to look at, AWS and operating systems and all that stuff, 10 years ago. And people would say, well, it will be very time consuming for me to plug into the cloud. I need to do all this, but today we do it. And today we do it even, within minutes. And so, but the key thing that happened there was that there was an infrastructure that was built. So when we think about the future of work, again, it's really, is your company built, right, to attract and to leverage freelancers? I think that's the first question you have to ask yourself. And what does that mean? Well, it means that if your company is built so that when somebody joins in, they need to basically build their own procedure document. They need to basically go and be on location because you don't have cloud infrastructure that would allow them to connect, elsewhere. They need to basically come and so the way we organize our business today has to change also, right? And so what I'm saying is, what you need to do to make freelancing effective for you is not to say that, it's time consuming. It's to look at your business and say, okay, how do I structure my business to make it more prone to leverage freelancing? And to me, the way you do that is you turn your focus into what are you trying to achieve? Amadou mentioned that earlier. He says, why do you need to get a full-time person to solve a problem that you have that is very time bound, where he's going to come in, that problem is going to be solved, and then he's going to have to stay in anyway because he's a full-time. So it's really looking at what are you trying to achieve, right? Whether it's the product, whether it's a process, whether it's a specific issues that you have. And say, okay, based on these different outcomes, how do I structure my company, right, to basically achieve that? And again, working with a partner like Gebeya, we went through the process. We know a lot of companies, startups that are going through the process. We, as part of like helping you find the talent, will also look at your company specifically and say, okay, how can you make this work, right? We really want to also, because we realize that, for us, especially on the continent, to basically go and have startups being comfortable with freelancing, we need to do some work. So we really also working with our partners and clients to help them even look at how they structure their company to take advantage of freelancing. But I can tell you, it is possible. Not only it's possible, it's actually the only way going forward. And so it's just, how do you make it happen?
Yeah, I'll add on to that. This is sort of like the core. This is the reason why actually we're doing this webinars, and we'll do more, right? We'll dig in later. Maybe a different webinar is going to focus on how do you onboard quickly and make your freelancer productive, or forget freelancing, your staff productive. Is really the question. It has nothing to do with freelancing and permanent person, because if your company structure, like Yannick said, in a way that every time you bring somebody new, right, you need to train them into what was built and stuff like that, then that's good. Then you're going to always have talent problems, right? You have to structure in a way going forward. I'm not saying the past is past, but going forward, whoever you're going to bring in, let's say it's a tech talent, when they plug in, they have a specific job to do. So the environment for that person needs to be up and running. They don't necessarily need to know the vision of your company, the culture of your companies and all that stuff, right? They can just focus on what they need to get done, at least from a freelancer perspective. Now, if you want to hire permanent, that's why I say if you want to hire a permanent employee, it's not to solve a problem or solve a specific thing in your company. It's because you're expanding. You're scaling, you're growing, you need more people to do multiple things. As a matter of fact, as a startup, you should not have any of your staff that you have core should not do only one thing and one thing only. They should wear multiple hats. That's how you hire permanent employee or core team. They have to wear multiple hats. If they're not, guess what? If they leave, you run into a problem. But as a freelancer, if you structure, let's say you tell me you have a specific problem. Let's say you're building a product and there's a particular integration you need to do with something, or build a mobile app. But you're telling me that if you bring that guy, you need to train him. What do you need to train him on? If the person that you got is good, because a freelancer is not supposed to be someone who have experience here and there, or not. It's someone who knows exactly what to do. So if you're building a fintech app, for example, you might want to hire a fintech mobile application developer freelancer, and they need to show you they've done it before. But if you're just going to hire them because they worked on different things before and came in, of course, you're going to have to teach him. Say he was working in healthcare, but now you want to build a fintech app. He knows the nuances about business processes around healthcare, but he doesn't know the processes of fintech. So that's a risk there. But if the person you're hiring is already in fintech, right, and joining you as a fintech company, guess what? They know the nuances of finance already. They know what credit and debit means. They've built a mobile app. They probably do essentially what you're going to do already. So you plug that person in. So it's really, how do you structure your company to hire the people that will actually do exactly what you need them to do without even needing to know your company, which includes the intellectual property, right? Because that freelancer is going to leave you unless now you decide to say, no, I want that freelancer permanently. There's guys who do that. We have clients who hire freelancers permanently, but they are part of a small unit of a particular product they're building. So it doesn't impact the entire company, right? So if you are a small startup and you're saying that it's hard to plug in a freelancer to training and stuff like that, and big companies are doing that, then how are you going to scale? You can't scale. If that mindset is there, you can't scale, because you're always going to think, I need guys who, as soon as they come in, I train him, I do this, I do that. That process, maybe, I'm not sure if you're in operation or you're the CEO, right? Maybe the CEO, as a CEO, you feel like that, but you need to have someone in operation who actually alleviate that problem for you, so you don't have to worry about freelancers coming in and getting trained. In my case, that's what happened. Before we raised, it was me and Yannick who were the main executives, the CFO and the CEO. One of the first things the investors said when they wanted to invest in our company, you need to hire a COO, a Chief Operation Officer, within 3 months to build you the processes for your company to be more efficient. So we had to bring in our COO, Lul, who helped us put the process. When somebody gets hired, it's flawless. It shouldn't take any time. Maybe that's the issue that you face. But I hope that we answer that question. We can probably move on to the next one.
Okay, super. Thank you. I'm going back to the question that was submitted in advance here, how to hire a senior talent as a startup with no cash flow, excuse me, beyond offering equity, which I think was somewhat addressed, or rather, I think that during the presentation, Amadou, you talked about offering some equity in the company, but maybe there is some other tip here to address on how to, I guess maybe this is again around retention, or create attractive startups that attract talent.
Well, I think
this is okay.
Yeah, so I think hiring for a startup is not easy, and again, there's no easy answer here. But I think a couple of things that you want to consider. I don't think compensation is necessarily, especially when you're trying to build your core team, should be what you should be looking at. What you should be looking at, again, alignment in vision. You should be looking at expertise, and then you should be looking at readiness to commit. So it's fine and nice to have equity and share, but 50% of a company that was $0 is still $0. So really what you're trying to see is you're really trying to get on board with people who can execute, can deliver with you. And again, take your time. There's no need to rush because you want to put a company and then a team. Take your time to basically go and look for these, especially your core team, because it would make or break your company. So there's no especially at that level, there's no short answer. Try to do your best you can while you select a loan. Again, we've seen companies with, company with two people, chugging along, for a while they basically get the right people on board. What can you do? And then, slowly and surely put together your team.
For me, it's one word, leadership. It's all about you, the founder. People tell me, how do you be able to hire all these or poach these guys or bringing someone like Yannick, Becky, or all these guys? It's all about the style of leadership. It's all about you. You cannot sort of, a senior person gonna need some money. So you have to pay him a salary. If you have no cash flow, you can't pay him. So equity, if you don't want to give out equity, then what are you left with? You're only left with your word as a CEO, as a founder, whatever, to tell that person that I'm going to build a great company, and are you willing to come with me? And you're gonna also have to answer the next question: what's the worst that can happen? So that's the only way. For me, it's just leadership. There's no way. I mean, if it's a senior person, they're going to need to live. They need money, right? And if you don't have no cash flow, then how do you deal with that? So Yannick, for example, is very senior. The way I hired him is through leadership. I sold him on something that he believed in, and then we wrote together. Same thing as Becky. It's sort of like, now you have to learn, how do you become that leader that people are attracted to? Whether they want to work for you or associate themselves with you and stuff like that, if you don't have any cash, right? But if you do have cash, then you have the luxury of hiring people based on merit, based on compensation and stuff like that. But if you have no cash, surround yourself with, or build yourself, through, anyway, maybe a mentorship and something that I can help some of the entrepreneurs in the continent, because I was told that I'm a very good sort of person that can attract certain types of talents with them, make them work for free. I've done that before. So yeah, leadership.
Thank you. So there's a question in the chat that I swear wasn't planted here from Lilin. What is the best platform to use to secure freelancers in Addis? I promise this isn't someone from the marketing team. I'm not sure at what point you joined, Lilin, in the call, and we were kind of explaining how we work. So we are based in Addis, but operate across the continent. So I'm not sure if you're looking for freelancers in Addis who can work with you in person, or you're more interested and open to, finding the best talent, location agnostic, but be happy to discuss further with you and find out more about what your needs are. Specifically, it seems like there's some very specific kind of use cases being shared here. I like that. Thank you for giving that detail, everyone. Is there anything, Amadou or Yannick, that you wanted to add on to that? I know Amadou mentioned even a couple of other kind of global platforms throughout the presentation, such as Upwork and Fiverr, but of course they're not specific to or catering to Addis in any way.
No, I think you answered it.
Okay. All right. How are we on time here? Okay, so we've just got about a little more than 10 minutes. I don't know that we'll make it to all of the questions listed here, but I do want to make sure we address those here in the chat. So I'll go to the next one there, from Vivens, who is in Rwanda and founder of a company called Umurava Work, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Looks like they're also doing providing freelancing services for Africans, and looking to perhaps build a partnership together. So in this instance, Vivens, I would also be happy to connect offline and learn more in detail and learn more about your business too. So I have your contact, and in fact, I'm going to put my email address here in the chat for everyone, because I would be happy to connect. Oh, great. I'd be happy to. Sorry, I meant to send that to everyone. I will drop that here in the chat so everyone in the meeting can see, and we can follow up after. Becky@gebeya.com. All right. So then the next question here is, I think we talked about the sales. So Africa is next. I think Yannick had kind of addressed the sales question and what kind of things to consider when it comes to building a sales team, working both with freelancers and a more permanent staff and that mix. But you're also asking here, it looks like around social media and marketing skill sets. So for you and for everyone who's joined us today, Gebeya is not only about tech talent. We have a variety of talents in software development, but also, yes, digital marketing, as well as cybersecurity, graphic design, project management, product management, and others. So I'd be happy, again, to connect with you separately to learn more about what specifically it is that you're looking for. All right. Let's see if there's any other question. So there's one follow-up question, Amadou, to your talking about leadership. How do you become a leader that people are attracted to? It's a big one.
Yeah, it's a big one. I mean, you guys can answer that, Becky and Yannick. How did I become the leader that you guys were attracted? So I'm not biased.
So I can go first. If I understand your question correctly, I think it's around not just showcasing the skill sets of a leader that people are attracted to, but how do you actually develop them? So two things I noticed about Amadou right away is that he is very resourceful and very much has mentors himself, but also is often recommending different books to read, articles, and is very much constantly not only consuming but applying things that he's also learning and keeping, as we were talking earlier today about having an in-house team and doing an audit and making sure that your staff is staying up to date. That's something that practice, that attending different webinars, following different thought leaders, that practice is something that those of us at Gebeya have adopted because we see the example. Or at least I can speak for myself. The leadership style is not one of I have all the answers and I'm the end all be all. It's more of a two-way knowledge sharing, openness that means that, as a leader, I also, I'm able to develop my leadership skills and, share resources that I come across too that I think are interesting, or, ask, ask, no question is too small. So those are two things: the mentoring, having your own mentors, being proactive about finding resources around that topic, and then lastly, that open communication. I can't remember a time that I ever reached out to Amadou, whether I was working remotely in a different country or in person in the same office working together, where he's like, I'm too busy or I don't have time right now. And so building a culture where there is a open door policy or a digitally open door policy also allows for ideas to flow very, very freely, and everyone benefits.
Yeah, Becky, just to add to that, for me, it's all about empowerment. I mean, leadership, especially when it comes to sometimes the continent in Africa, it's not necessarily about being strong and being having all the answers to all the questions. It's about empowering people. So I think that's one trait that Amadou does have for sure, and having a vision of helping others. There's the concept of the what do you call it, the helping leaders. I think that emotional intelligence, and your measure as a leader is how many people you empowered, really. And so I think if you think about it that way, you would attract a lot of people, I think.
Excellent. So there's one more question here in the chat, and we're almost out of our time, from someone in the Netherlands wanting to work with us. So thank you, MU. I've got your email address here, and I've also shared mine in the chat. So we'll follow up after the webinar. Any last questions? Let me take a quick look here. If there's anything burning that we may want to address before we close out. Or maybe Amadou and Yannick, from what we have here on the screen, is there maybe one or two, mostly from the right-hand side, that we haven't gotten a chance to get to that you might want to address?
Well, no, I think we pretty much covered everything. I think for the rest, I just suggest that they, reach out to us. I mean, we're here for you, helping you through this process. So, just reach out.
Great.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'd like to do is sort of, revisit the questions most of, was asked in the chat, revisit the questions that were sent ahead of time, and organize webinar around each of those, monthly, right? Maybe a few of the questions are sort of revolve around, for example, leadership, right? In order to attract leadership.
Mm.
And then the other one would be around, how do you, the question about hiring special talent, right? Developers and stuff. So if we organize maybe 4 or 5 sort of groups of questions that are similar, and we create topics about that, we can sort of create webinars that we can share, because we are learning as we go as well, right? We have things that the data that whatever we talked about came from our data, who's contacting and stuff, but having sort of a continuous way of doing this and creating a partnership where we can collaborate with you guys, where you can maybe next time we'll pick on one of the attendees to give us one specific issue, and we can see how we can solve that problem live, right? Even maybe help you hire someone live, or go through a specific case where you need to make a decision very quickly and so on. So make it very dynamic, so we have some sort of a community around finding, how do you hire smart, pretty much going forward. I'd like to see if everybody's okay with that, and Becky, you can organize it accordingly. But thank you all for your time, and this is great. This is a great time for all of us here. And yeah, you can look at us as partner. We're all available, and I'll share also my email if anybody wants to reach out and ask more questions or have a virtual coffee. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. And yes, we will share a couple of people have asked if we'll be sharing the recording. Yes, we will do that after. So thank you again. And that concludes our session.